Hello there. This is Cindy Liu with CHRO Partners, and I'm joined by Jamie Mackenzie. Jamie is the HR and Talent Advisory Lead at IBM. And guess what we're going to talk about today? AI and HR. I'm really excited to welcome Jamie for so many reasons. It's a confusing time. There's so much information coming at us at this point. And Jamie, we're going to ask for some clarity, and hopefully you can share that for us. All
Yeah, I
right.
hope we able to bring a lot of clarity for your audience,
Yeah.
Cindy.
Yeah. Where should we start on this whole AI topic? It's ginormous.
So we can talk a little bit about, I think, let's just break it down and give some general definitions across automation. AI is a form of automation. So let's break it down into the four kinds of automation that exist. And then we can give some use cases around each of those kinds of different types of automation. And then I think it'll be good for us to talk about a little bit more also about the ramifications of automation and what's being asked. In my day job, I interact with a lot of HR leaders, and while AI is obviously front and center, there's a lot of other parts of HR and enterprises that are coming to bear as well. And I think it's important for your audience to hear it's not just about the technology, but all of the other parts of their organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the automation. Where do we start?
So, as I said, think about AI as a form of automation. And
Okay.
there's really four forms of automation. And the first is really what we've known in the past as robotic or repetitive process automation, depending on which school of thought you belong to, the R
hmm
stands for repetitive or robotic. And really there, what you're looking at is something that is a programmatic automation. There's
hmm
no smarts in it, if you like. It really requires structured input and logic. And what it does is that it really runs through a structured process using structured data, replicates those steps of the process in a programmatic way, and
hmm
really, in many cases, enters data into a system that is capturing the data. So it's really great at doing structured, repetitive tasks that requires no data-driven logic per se. Often it's just captured directly off a spreadsheet and entered into a system. So if you think about that, and we won't spend a lot of time in this area, but there's obviously, you have a spreadsheet that captures data. So let's say, for example, in a plant, uh, hours are captured against an employee number, and that can therefore then be given to a program that actually takes that data and enters it into a timekeeping or a payroll system
hmm
to actually be able to enter the data in a high-speed way. And again, using that structured data. I think the thing about that is, as I said, there's no smarts to it. And so it's really, if there's an error, there's an error. It can't work it out. Often the program just stops. Someone has to fix the error, and then we get started again with the loading of the data. So that's really that pre-AI sort of automation. Then we get into three kinds of AI, which we're building on, if you like, and have been building over the last 5 to 10 years. The first is really traditional, what we call traditional AI. And think about it as a really very smart tool. So there is more smartness involved in the discussion. It differentiates itself from RPA because it is data driven. It can make some decisions based on the data that it has. And that data can be unstructured. So it doesn't have to be in a spreadsheet, in columns. And in some ways, it simulates human intelligence, and AI builds on that intelligence as you move forward because of the technology behind. We won't talk about the technology that's behind it, but you hear about machine learning and natural language processing. So all of that is really what drives artificial intelligence to be able to simulate a human. What that
What's an example?
does, sorry?
I was going to say, what's an example?
Yeah, so for example, and I'll use a non-HR example first of
Okay.
all, something that happens to each of us every day. AI can actually sort through your mail, your emails, and actually know what is spam and what's not spam based on actions you've done in the past or keywords, right? We all see it in our emails every day, where we find things in spam, and that's because the email program has actually done some other work. And so if I break it down and then start looking at it from an HR perspective, and again, it's really great at those repetitive tasks that require some specific action, and in some cases using unstructured data. So think about it, particularly in the administration area, handling routine HR tasks, processing leave requests, updating employee records, even managing benefits enrollment, right? That's that more administration that we do in HR. So AI is able to take data and create those admin transactions that we capture in our different HR systems or beyond, right? Recruiting is another example, right, as well. If I just maybe give a deeper example on recruiting, and one that I think is very pertinent today, and one that we've all heard about, is AI uses algorithms, and it actually can screen resumes and rank employees based on the keywords and experiences. So it can actually automate those repetitive tasks that are necessary around, looking at a resume, finding the keywords, ensuring that the candidate has all of that information there. And then it can even go a little further and start looking at, can we schedule interviews and follow-up emails once a human has interacted with the outcomes, right? So it's not making any decisions on who should be interviewed and who to follow up with. It's really being able to do that as a support through the process.
Gotcha. Okay. So a non-business example would be Netflix, like it knows what movies I'm picking and it says, hey, you
Exactly.
might like this one as well. Okay.
And yeah, and even the shopping sites that we use, right? Amazon, you go in, we all spend more money these days, right? Because it knows to bring up in front of us exactly the kind of thing we typically like to buy.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like Netflix and Amazon and others
Okay.
that really got to bring it. Airbnb is a big one that I use as well, and so it knows the kinds of properties that I like, right?
Right. Right. So maybe as a hiring leader, it'd be like, well, you like this candidate, so maybe this one would also be a good fit for you. I know I'm way oversimplifying that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it can actually, certainly what you're telling it to look for
Right.
and learning from your previous decisions is definitely a hallmark of AI, is that it's learning at the same time
Mhm.
what's actually happening, and the algorithm actually picks up momentum because of the fact that it's learning from you and the actions that you take. Right?
What's interesting is I used to be in executive search, and we saw that most searches went haywire, mostly because the hiring leader, didn't really know what they were looking for, right?
Yeah,
They wanted to calibrate as you went. So forcing that thought process of like, what are you really looking for? Because
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I was thinking about exactly that earlier while I was thinking about this discussion, Cindy,
Mhm.
and that we talk a lot about DEI. We talk, and particularly at this point in time, we
Mhm.
talk a lot about bias, etc. AI can take out some of that bias and actually and create momentum in DEI because it is based on rules
Mhm.
that are or should be built in such a way, and an algorithm built in such a way that actually is looking for the best candidate in the recruiting scenario, and therefore make sure that you're getting the right candidates in front of you with the right skill sets.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so you've got robotic, traditional AI. What's
Then we
the
move to generative AI.
okay?
And that's the one that's exploded onto the scene in the last 24 months, right? It's the one OpenAI and all these other tools that we hear about today, and that's really um, if if traditional AI is a really a clever assistant, generative AI is a creative assistant, right?
Okay.
And that is that generative AI, it's in the name, actually generates content. So rather than just summarizing or pulling out and doing automated tasks for you, generative AI actually can create content or generate content that we see in terms of the new, we hear a lot about it in terms of music and filmmaking and all this and artwork. It's all what's been very much on the news, right, in terms of generative AI, and that it is it's taking it one step further, and it's great at producing content. And if there's and when there is the human interaction, it's that original content and coming up even with ideas. I use generative AI on a daily basis in my work as I work through the different papers that I'm reading and understanding. I'm able to use it on my desktop. We have IBM Consulting Advantage, which is our tool that sort of is involved. It's like my twin, if you like. On a daily basis, I ask it to do tasks for me in terms of summarizing stuff that I've read, combining it, helping me articulate points of view so that I can get on with more specialized and expertise areas that are required in my work, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about that, then think about generative AI as being able to help your people in HR create content for HR policies or benefits guides or procedural documents, right? So all of that is stuff that you can bring content to generative AI and to your assistant, and it will be able to summarize and condense, etc., all of that information together to be able to create that content, and as a starting point for the expert, then to actually be able to bring the reality of the business that's building the policies or benefits, etc., to life.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I also use generative AI daily, and it was interesting. The other day, I got a marketing email from Seth Godin, and I was kind of like, this is really interesting. It was definitely directed towards entrepreneurs, but I'm like, definitely there's an application for CHROs.
Mm-hmm.
So I took he writes very short blogs, and I took the blog and I said, help me take this concept of playing billiards, on a boat. That was the
Okay.
right. That's what he wrote about. And I said, and apply this to our CHRO mastermind members who this is exactly what they're living. And in one take, it was perfect. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, much better. Like I had it floating around in my brain, but I couldn't really put it together in words. And is that what you're talking about when
Yeah,
you're
exactly
like
right.
creating?
Like I think and so if we stay with the recruitment area, right, and
Right.
bring it to life again in the HR example,
Mhm.
think about what it can do in terms of job descriptions, right? Being able to push out data or content in the job description, which is engaging, which is uses words that are equal, right, and creating that DEI opportunity as well to be able to attract all of the candidates. So you really there you've got the opportunity also then taking that same content to look at what are the questions I need to be asking when doing this interview for this candidate. So all of that takes time, and there are people that do that today. And there's a lot of work, as you're saying, it takes a lot of time to do that. But being able to use something like OpenAI or the different assistants that we can all use, it can really help make us more productive, because that hard work of actually creating that first draft can be done for us, and then we can actually apply the expertise. And I think that's what you'll see, right, is AI is about creating content that an expert then actually applies their knowledge to. It's a human plus machine,
Right. Right.
and being able to for the two of them to work together. And that's really what driving later in the discussion when we talk a little bit more about skills and the development. That's really what's driving that discussion that I see today with CHROs and HR leaders.
So I think I gave you an example of a case study from one of our roundtable discussions recently with CHROs. And it was where they took the personality tests and then fed that into ChatGPT or whatever tool they were using, and then asked for a customized orientation. And the room went crazy. They were like, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. And you had a comment about that. I'm curious if you might share
Can you remind me what my
the
comment was?
governance about governance.
Yes,
Yeah,
right, exactly. And so we go back to the previous point then, right?
yeah,
Is that there always needs to be a human in the loop,
right.
right? Think about the teams doing that work today. If you've got 5 people doing that work today, you have 4 people that are working through the detail, and there'll be a supervisor that's actually doing QA checks, etc., and making sure that the outcomes are what are really suitable. We have exactly the same scenario with Gen AI or AI in general today, and that is from an IBM perspective, we're always talking about governance and a human in the loop, because if you let it run on its own without that supervision, again, that is where you start to find the problems being created, because people are receiving information and outcomes that haven't yet been controlled. So yeah, so in an example like that, or a personality test, you can imagine how far that could go if it's not correctly governed. And the models are still hallucinating as well, right? Which is they make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and those mistakes need to be controlled in the same way we would do with a human worker. We need to do the same with a digital worker as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I imagine though a lot of that work just doesn't get done because HR is so busy. They're like, you know what, you don't get much of an orientation at all. Here's your paperwork and good luck, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's creating opportunities for HR leaders to serve the employees better. All right.
Well, yeah, I think it's creating capacity within the HR function, like it is across the enterprise, and that capacity is what needs to be reused for those quality outcomes, right? Like
Yeah,
actually being able to do that personality test work and get that result. Often it comes with a timeline or a deadline. You're actually able to get to a point where you're able to look at the summarization in a day rather than in a month, right? And
right. Right.
and that's the kind of difference we're talking about. Uh,
Mhm.
and then the individuals that are actually doing the real work and the expertise work can then actually have some really quality time to be looking at all of the detail.
Yeah. Well, and you know about that world, right? I mean, so you're not a lifelong consultant. Let me just take a break here and tell the audience a little bit about your background before we get into the fourth area.
Yeah, no, I think that's it is. I joined IBM less than 12 months ago, and I came from a corporate HR career, right? I've spent half of my career in consulting and half of my career in corporate. And my most recent 13 years up until the beginning of last year was in a corporate HR role for a multinational company, 70 countries, 160,000 employees, working for the CHRO and the HR leadership team. So I really do understand very clearly some of the challenges that HR are facing today, and that empathy, right, for that the work that needs to get done within a timeline, within a budget, and how tools like AI can actually create the space that is necessary for quality outcomes from HR for the business and engaging workforce in the workforce planning, throughout all of the talent operations, and really being able to try to do the best possible for the people that work for the enterprise. So yeah, it's been a real passion for me. I joined IBM because of its position as it relates to artificial intelligence, and I haven't been disappointed. What I've also saw in spades as well is really the it's not just about AI, and that it's everything else that sits around it. And that's where HR really is an exciting place to be today, because AI will enable everything as it relates to humans, employees, and the workforce. And that's where HR plays, right? That's our accountability and our responsibility. And so it really brings some very interesting opportunities to life for HR in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so sorry to pull you off track there, but I thought it was important for the audience to know about your background. I think I'm sure you're like, what an exciting time, right, for the HR leaders. Okay, so we got robotics, traditional AI, generative AI. Where are you taking us next?
All right, so the next one is the one we've all been hearing about, that is called agentic AI. Okay,
Mhm.
and again, we're building, if you like, as we're moving up the chain. Agentic is really an autonomous problem solver. So it's now again building on unstructured data. The algorithm understands what we're trying to achieve. We have specific issues or problems or transactions or different outcomes that we're looking to achieve. And agentic AI now, with the latest models that are starting to emerge, can actually take it even further. It is creating not only content, but content in context of the
Mhm.
situation of the data, and really being able to make decisions and perform tasks on its own.
Mhm.
Again, always remembering a human in the loop, but really being able to take action based on the data that it's received and handle those complex outcomes, those complex transactions autonomously, with the right governance in place, as I said, right? So it's proactive, it's adaptable, and can handle like a wide range of tasks independently, and is very, very exciting because that is all of the different levels of AI are creating value exponentially, and this latest layer as it relates to agentic is really the one that's taking us off the chart at the moment, if you like.
Yeah. So is that like you get on a chat to get help on, a program or something, and you really feel like you're talking to a human on the other end,
That's right. That's when you start to interact with avatars that
right?
are able to have a dialogue with you, understanding the language you're using, and
Hmm.
being able to take you through a process and execute on different transactions that you need done. That's a customer type interaction, if you like, right?
Right.
If you think about it from an HR perspective, we continue the recruiting example, right?
Hmm.
That use case. An agent will be able to handle the recruiting process from the start to the end. They can do the sourcing of the candidates, they can even conduct the initial interviews and do the screening for you, and they can even make preliminary hiring decisions. Again, they're not making the decision, but they can be putting in front of the recruiter, maybe for the high volume different recruiting that we do
Hmm.
in plants or certain roles, that they can actually be doing that work, and putting all of the tasks in place for just a final human control on quality and the right outcomes, and really being able to take all of that effort out. Again, it has to be in the right context with the right process, but at the same time, and at the same time, using that governance that I keep talking about as well, right? That we really need to be clear on that decision, the humans in the end making the decision.
Well, and I think so many people focus on exclusion, right? Like, oh, the AI is not going to include certain people because of what it's learned from the history. But I heard this story years ago, and I can't even tell you where I heard it from, but because I consume so much content, and if I had AI, it would tell me now.
That's summarize it for
Right,
you.
right, right. But it was about I believe it was L'Oreal, and that kind of company with so much brand recognition, you're
Mm,
getting hundreds and thousands of resumes. A human could not possibly get through them all, right? And so, in order to make it manageable, I believe companies like that in the past just said, you know what, you have to come out of an Ivy League institution or
correct.
not even consider, it's just that's the funnel that we can at least start with. And so apparently they used some technology that allowed them to look at who had been successful in their organization, right? Who had the it factor. Wasn't about resume, it wasn't about degree or where you got your degree. And they were able to find superstars in the far reaches of, like, say, China, schools that they would have never considered. And
Mm,
supposedly this AI. Now, this is so long ago that, Jamie, I was like, was that a made up story? Was that like something they hope could happen? Like, was
yeah.
that possible 10 years ago?
Yeah. So I think it would have been possible, but it would have taken a lot longer than what it takes today.
Right.
Right?
Okay. I
And,
see.
and so there are certainly, it's all based on data and logic, right? So
Right.
if you have the data and you have the logic and you can actually do that analysis, uh,
Mhm.
you have 100 people sitting in a room analyzing all of that data and the people analytics, right, at the very
Mhm.
center. And that's where it starts to cross over with AI as well, where the people analytics that you want to be driving towards to get the insight on your workforce, the decisions that you're making around all of your talent and how you're supporting the business and achieving their outcomes, is actually now being able to be done in a fraction of the time, because you don't need 100 people sitting in a room. You still need 20 people sitting in a room, right, to make sure that we're doing that right governance and checking the details and the new skills they need to actually ensure that the machine is looking for the right stuff. But it actually happens in record time and a fraction of the time,
Right.
because of the machine being able to do it and provide that initial outcome,
Right.
and doing it. And I think it's a really important point you're making. I talk to a lot of people, my friends outside of our industry, and they talk about, I got interviewed by a machine, or my resumes are getting screened, etc. I'm not sure I like that. And what I'm able to play back to them is, you may not have had your resume screened in the past
Right.
because you were part of 1,000 resumes that came in. So it is leveling the playing field in terms of what's becoming really important is the resume you write needs to be absolutely tuned to what you're applying for, and also with the skills that you really have, because the machine will pick up on that and ensure that your resume floats to the top if you've got the right stuff. And
Right.
again, it does all kinds of analysis based on very unbiased characteristics, and able to have everybody have that equal chance at getting the right job.
Mhm.
Right?
Will agentic be able to assess somebody who maybe didn't look like the perfect resume and push that person onto the hiring leader? I'll tell you why. When I was in executive search, I think part of the reason we were really good at it was getting to the really crux of what the hiring manager actually wanted from a soft
Yeah,
skills
yeah,
perspective. And as at the end of the day, often it wasn't even about what was on the resume, which, by the way, from an OFCCP standpoint, there's this is a long time ago before OFCCP was even around.
right.
But there were candidates where I'm like, I know they don't look right on paper, but you got to meet this person because they have exactly what you're looking for. And sometimes it's even hard for me to articulate, but I could give them like other examples about their past, like how they grew up, right? Things that made them candidates who were uh, get it done kind of people.
Yeah.
Do you
So I
see?
think it's a great example and a great topic, because yes, it can learn to do that, right?
Okay.
Based on what's actually happening with the different other roles that you're recruiting. And also, let's be clear, the recruiter has a vital role as well to be asking those powerful questions to the hiring manager to tease out what are you really looking for. And so there's that playoff between the human and the machine as well, and then being able to bring that into something like a generative AI that will create the perfect job posting so that it can be attracting those individuals. Agentic AI can learn to do that work, and can learn from the hiring manager and from the organization in which it's
Mm.
operating. But it wouldn't be able to do it out of the gate, right? So it wouldn't be able to, as a first resume or a first review. And that's the power, right? Think about AI as the smartest person you've ever met that doesn't know anything yet, right? Or doesn't have that context of the situation, and really being able to do things very quickly and smartly as they learn very, very well from the algorithm.
I love it. I love that. The smartest person you know who doesn't know anything yet.
Yeah, exactly right.
So
So,
good. That's
and we,
so good.
yeah, and it's we all we've all recruited employees like that as well, coming straight out of the schools that you're talking about, and they're just sponges. And AI is the same, right? It is a sponge to learn and to adapt and to understand what are the outcomes the business is really looking for.
Okay, let's talk about that. You wanted to talk about skills and development, and I know that's hot on CHRO's mind. I mean, even before, even 2 years ago, right? 3 years ago, people are already talking about skilling, reskilling, upskilling. What,
Yeah,
what, what
I like to talk about it, Cindy, for the reason you've just met, is that the whole skills discussion really started gathering a lot of momentum at least 5 years ago. But the amount of work that was necessary was it was hard to build a business case to do it, as well as the technologies were catching up and they were starting to have different marketplaces for internal and external recruiting. What we're seeing today, and it's funny the way that it's playing out, is that I said to you earlier, right? You have 5 people on a team, and now maybe in the future you need 2 people, and you'll have 3 digital workers or a digital worker that does the work of 3 people.
When you say digital workers, are you referring to agents, perhaps?
Yeah, agents and generative AI, so AI in general, right? That smart person that doesn't know anything yet, right? And apart from what we tell them. And so, um, if you think about if an individual on that team has 10 things to do and 10 skills they need to do that work, in the future, they won't need to do half of those tasks, let's say, right? There are 5 things that they're doing that are repetitive and that can be done by the agent or by generative AI. That then clears their agenda, right? They've got the 5 skills that they really do need to be bringing value to the decisions that are being made based on what AI is telling it. Then, however, that same individual that's now freed up on their time, some of their time now needs to be used managing the artificial intelligence and the machine. So they now have a different set of skills they need to build. So if they had 10 skills before, it's come down to 5, and now it's gone up to 7, let's say, because now they have to learn new skills in how to manage a digital worker and new skills that teach them about innovation and how to actually prompt, right? Prompt engineering is the classic example. If we're all using what you type into those different AI machines that you use to do the work, how you ask it is vitally important, right? Because it is the question that it's learning from.
Mhm.
So that prompt, as it's called in the artificial intelligence world, we call it prompt engineering, and having a skill set in how to ask the machine questions is something that we all don't naturally have because we have that discussion between ourselves and we work it out, right?
Right.
And you can still do that with AI. But so that skill set now is of that individual has grown in some way and has shrunk in other ways because they're no longer needing to do those repetitive, uncreative tasks. Okay. So
Okay, so let's define prompt engineering just briefly, just because I thought everybody knew what it meant. I've been studying AI for, a year and a half now, just trying to get up on the terminology. And I mentioned the word to an engineer that I know, to be unnamed, and he was like, "What's prompt engineering?" And so I explained it to him. He's like, "Well, that's not engineering." I'm like, "Oh, but it saves me so much time. I don't care what they call it." And so I
yeah,
recently took a prompt engineering course, and you know, I would say I was a prompt hack before, just
yeah,
like one quick sentence. After taking this course, I'm like, wow, you know what? It's going to take a little time to get this prompt right. And it took me 2 hours one day to write a prompt, but it saved me weeks
yes, yeah,
of time,
exactly.
weeks of time. So maybe you
Well,
could,
yeah. So think about the way this is the way I think about it very simplistically. Think about the way even before prompting and AI, we would ask Google for something. I'm looking for like just think about the different ways that you would come up with the question that you were asking your search engine to
Mhm.
find the data
Right.
until it came up with really the refined search criteria or the search outcomes that you were looking for. That's really prompt engineering. And
Yeah.
so working with a machine that again is that really smart person, you really need to be able to construct your questions in a way that helps them give you the best outcome the first time. I loved your example, right? 2 hours to do it. You could have spent 2 hours just putting in all kinds of questions and having to read through all different kinds of content and saying this is not actually right or not exactly what I'm looking for. But if you're able to have the understanding of how to actually ask your question
Mhm.
from the machine and take the time to do that, it will give you the best answer at the first outcome, right? That you can work with. And so we call it prompt engineering. It's probably It's a nice another buzzword, right? But at the same time, it's a very, very important skill that anybody, that it's a human using a machine, needs to have, and it's something that adds to the skill catalog of that individual in that job, right?
Right. Yeah. I love that skill catalog.
So if you think about, and again, talking about skills, right? Like it's like I see it literally on a daily basis, it's not an hourly basis in the discussions I'm having, where we're talking about the technology. The technology is disruptive, absolutely, but it fits into the context of what the business is trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And what HR has today, in terms of how it's structured, in terms of its operating model, its job architectures for all of the different parts of the business that it's supporting, the competencies that define that job, how do we actually bring all of that to life? All of that today is being hyper disrupted as well, right? Like I said to you earlier, all of the tasks or the skills that support those tasks within a job catalog are all up for change, right? Because AI is adding and supporting the worker, taking away the need for certain skills and adding the need for other skills. In the
Right.
past, like I said to you, it's been in my personal experience, I was involved in skills discussions within my previous employer, in the corporate role I had. And there was a lot of work. We were trying to work out how can we find the value, because there was a lot of work to be done. What's ironic, maybe, is that AI is not only generating the disruption for skills, but it's actually the answer to actually get the skills done at the same time. So it's a closed loop, because AI can now actually do a lot of the work necessary and automate a lot of the work necessary for what you need to be doing in terms of identifying the skills, what's the different learning programs that are necessary to build the right skills, etc. We've seen, I'm going to give you an extreme example,
Mm-hmm.
working through a job catalog with a client, we can apply AI tools to that job catalog that has got unwieldy because it's grown over time, right? It hasn't been governed in maybe the right way, or it's just the nature of the business that you're in.
So
And
they have
within,
1,000 employees and they have 1,001 job descriptions, for example.
for example, it's like I know it's none of your audience that have that problem, but I've heard about that problem somewhere else, right? And so by applying AI to what you have, it can actually play back to you. Here's actually the 100 jobs you need, because we've been through the 1,001.
Yeah.
We've condensed them into these 100. Here's all the duplications, etc. We've removed them all, and we've brought them together. So by being able to apply AI to that conundrum, you've actually now got a great starting point with jobs and skills all attached. So you actually understand, here's really the 100 jobs we need. Then you start to apply AI again and say, find me the individuals with those skills that are in those jobs today. Then what's the learning programs that they need? And so AI will go out and search within the learning catalog that you can have access to apply for this individual now to get up to speed faster or to be the best they can be in that job. Here's the 3 or 4 different learning programs they need to go through to build their skills. And all of that is happening by a machine. And again, before, remember I said, like, to do that with a human, it took an enormous amount of time, but now we can do it with the machine that can actually help bring that to life for the employee. And again, it all comes back to then to that employee experience that says, wait a minute, my employer cares about me because they're really taking very close notice of what I actually need to develop, what are the
Right.
skills I need, and here's the learning that I need to do it.
Yeah. I think the change management skills suddenly become exponentially more important. Now you freed up your time. And as the HR or the talent leader, for example, you're going back to all these leaders who said, I want all my old job descriptions,
Yeah.
right? You can apply your change management skills to helping them through this change, right? Versus,
Right. It's a fantastic segue, right? And so what happens then with all of that new job catalog and that new job organization if you think about it just in the HR context, what's your operating model now need to be? What's the role of the strategic business partner? What's the role of the CEO, COEs, I should say, sorry. And then what's the role that shared services plays? So not only then do we see a disruption at the individual and the job and the skills level, we need to actually look at what's actually happening from an operating model perspective. How does that need to adapt and be agile enough because of the change and the disruption? And again, AI is there to help you to work through that, understanding what's happening in the change. And then that plays out in how you deliver services. And again, plays out in how employee experience is important, right? With the new generations entering the workforce, that's the kind of interaction they're looking for. I have a 25-year-old daughter, and heaven forbid I ask her to call a human, right? She's very happy to interact with something that is meeting her needs, and at the same time giving her that career advancement that she's looking for through learning, through understanding exactly who she needs to interact with to bring it to life in her career planning, etc.
Yeah, no, that's really good. It's interesting the perspective of the employees, right? There are consumers basically. So we have to think
Yes.
about all the generations that are out there. And I think there was some talk in the past, like how do we address all 5 generations that are in the workforce today? I think you've got your answer right here, right? You
Well,
can
exactly
customize
right. Yeah, exactly. I think we spoke about Amazon and these things
Mhm.
earlier. The words
Mhm.
it's laying up for you what it's learnt about you,
Right, right.
and in the same way, you're going to see the same thing play out in HR. You can see the same thing play out now
Mhm.
because access to that technology is democratized, meaning it's greatly more available, and we can actually apply it to that relationship that we have with the employees. And again, like I'm in a particular generation, and the way I like to do things, the ability to do it actually does play out in one way. But then for my daughter, who's the Gen Z, she can have it play out another way. And the personalization that AI enables because of that, it's the same we see in the consumer world today around these different places where you and I go out and spend all of our money buying stuff, right?
Good. That's so good. You just gave me an idea. I keep buying Christmas presents for my daughter that she doesn't like because I think the news feed is feeding me things I like. So I need to go
Yeah,
on her feed to see what
that's
she's
a great.
getting fed.
I think you're very brave to buy things. I just give money, right? That's why I know she gets what she needs, right?
Yeah, no,
So
I think she'd rather me just give her a Sephora gift card.
yeah,
Okay, I feel like this operating model discussion warrants like a whole nother blog post. Like if I'm a CHRO today and I have an opportunity to hire a new person or build a team, I think I'd want to study this and be like, what are the skill sets, right, that I really need? And maybe they don't even exist on paper today, but I
yes,
think I'd want to know, like, what are those maybe soft skills I should be looking for? What would you be looking for if you were back in corporate?
that's a great question.
Or maybe this
So
is, yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead. Give me
Yeah.
what's off the top of your head, but we definitely,
So
I'd like to address this more.
yeah, so I think I'm looking for an individual, and it goes a little back to your question earlier, where you're looking for what's between the lines in a resume, right? I'm looking for an individual that is a self-starter. I'm looking for an individual that is able to drive forward and think on their feet. I'm looking for creative individuals. I'm looking for individuals that don't have boundaries based on what has been, because what will be and what is today is very different and can be very different. And so that starts to open up the boundaries of where we find our future employees from as well. And if you think about it just in the HR space, think about customer service representatives and how they can actually be the HR service delivery person of the future, because they don't need all the smarts of HR. It's what they're able to focus on is the experience of the employee or the customer and how they're consuming that service. And so you can actually start to see that and have that play out in all parts, shared services, COEs, and bringing individuals that are innovative and creative, that do the right work with the different kinds of tool sets that are available, building out your programs and the solutions that actually support where the business is going. And then think about the strategic business partner role, right? And I use the strategic business partner role, the strategic there, because it does truly become strategic. That we need them also thinking about my business that I'm supporting as the HR business partner. You start to explore into that workforce, and that you get into that strategic workforce planning and the strategic development of the different parts of that organization. And so I'm looking for individuals that don't have what we, the hard skills. I'm looking for individuals that we have that maybe have been set to the side in the past, soft skills, really being able to interact with humans and machine, right? And actually build that momentum going forward, that critical momentum in actually how do we use AI and how do we use technology to actually answer the many questions and issues and risks and problems that we have in our function today. And so it actually brings that to life, and really being able to look for different kinds of individuals that can bring that diversity in thought. And DEI is not a checklist. DEI is good business sense, right? Because you're bringing the diversity into the business to be able to think differently about the way things are done. And that's the kind of thing you still need to double down on in this world, because the machine can do the turning the handle. You want the expert that has different kinds of thought processes that can drive out innovative ways of doing work and
Yeah,
outcome.
no, yeah, that's music to my ears. I love that.
Yeah,
Well, Jamie, I think that's a great note to end on. So today we got to talk about robotic, um, traditional AI, generative AI, and agentic AI, as well as we just touched on the operating model. We'll definitely have to have you back to dive deeper into that topic.
yeah,
But thank you so much. I feel like I'm so much smarter, and I got it from a human.
yeah.
I didn't even know what to ask, right? So this was fantastic, Jamie. Thank you so much. Can we drop your LinkedIn profile into the show notes?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll
So people can
absolutely
reach
do
out.
that. I'd love to hear from your audience. If they've got any questions, I can follow up with them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie.
Excellent. Thank you, Cindy.